Ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Today we have Nique Roberts, and we're so excited. She's been a member of Fortify for about 2.5 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And she's had an amazing journey. I've gotten to know her pretty well over the last couple months, and we're excited to share your journey. It's kind of a unique opportunity. We have a lot of men on the program, and our population of women is slowly growing. And so we want to just, diversify and share some new things for you. And I'm really excited about the things she's going to share. She has some really practical wisdom that she's gained over her journey of recovery. But just to get started, let's just get to know you a little bit, Nique. So why don't you just share a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness. Okay, first, I'm really, really scared. This is my first time doing this. Well, the first time I was on a panel, so this is my first time kind of just me. So bear with me. So about me, I am a mom of 4. I homeschool. I'm kind of a homebody, so I like cooking and crocheting and reading and boring stuff like that. I'm not good at talking about myself. So, that's pretty much it. Like, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. That's, what I do. I spend my days, teaching my little ones and forming lesson plans and developing curriculum and stuff like that.
Oh, that's amazing. I have 5 children of my own, so I know the challenges of going, and hats off to you for doing homeschool. I had enough doing homework at home.
Yes. Yes. This is my 4th year, I think. No, 5th year. This is my 5th year homeschooling full time. So it's not for the faint of heart. It is not. And some days I'm like pulling out my hair and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, but it's been great. Like, my son, he's 11. My girls are, my oldest daughter actually is turning 9 in a week. So they're going to be 9. My middle girl just turned 7 on Monday, and my youngest is 4. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's dive into a little bit of recovery. So everybody has their own timeline of how they develop their unwanted sexual behaviors. And so let's just start out with what your timeline was like. Like, from childhood to adulthood, what are the contributing factors that while getting into addiction?
Okay, so for me, it started very, very early. My first pornography was probably between the ages of like 6 and 7, something like that.
Yeah, really.
I found a relative's, porn stash in our house. Back then, it was just the magazines, and there was a stack of them like hidden underneath the bed. That was my mistake. So after that, like, I would go and look for them whenever I could, whenever I had an opportunity, whenever I felt like I would. That went on for, I want to say, a few months. It's hard to pin down how long, when you're going that far back. But I want to say it went on for a few months before someone found it and got rid of it. Then shortly, like in the years following, then I was also exposed to videos when I had an older male cousin and a friend of his. They kind of trapped me in a room and turned on a video. And then an older relative found us, and that's how I got out of that situation. But that would have escalated, I'm sure. Then again, around the same time, I found videos on the TV at home, like, HBO or whatever it was back then. And I would, again, find that whenever I could. So this was all happening over the course of like those early years between, 6 and 9. And during that time, it wasn't a lot because I didn't have a lot of opportunity, but it was there. The exposure was there. And, that's something in a young child.
It does.
I also had, absolutely, I also had another classmate in my class when I was about 5. And in hindsight, he was absolutely a victim of sexual assault himself. And he would be acting out in school. And I didn't know, I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what was happening. And so that also kind of left me vulnerable. I was a victim of childhood sexual assault at the hands of an adult when I was about 9. So all of these early things created, first an exposure to pornography, but also like an intimacy dysfunction in me, and it left me vulnerable to these kinds of things after having been abused and being exposed at a very, very early age. When everything is forming during your formative years, it leaves you very vulnerable if no one's talking to you about these things. And the adults in my life didn't know, and especially I was raised mostly women. They absolutely didn't know. I'm very confident they've never struggled with pornography. They, in many cases didn't even really know what it really was. You know what I'm saying? Especially when videos were first becoming popular and the internet. So they didn't know. Fast forward, after that, I was good for a number of years until I got into an abusive marriage. So I remember I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, and I'd already kind of fell into erotic novels and written stories and stuff. I was being abused physically, emotionally, verbally. My ex, now my ex-husband, he was, in adultery, and he was addicted to pornography himself. And so that was a betrayal, and that left me feeling really hurt and angry. And then, the relationship, I wasn't getting anything out of the relationship, in terms of and so I started acting out with pornography. And by this time I had been away from it for years, so I was probably 20. I'd been away from it for maybe 10 years.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, like around that time frame. So I got into the erotica first, and then the video porn. And one of the big turning points in my life, I remember being pregnant with my daughter. I was away on a family vacation with my extended family. So not my husband and my children, but my children, my mom, my aunt, my uncle, all of us. We went away, and I remember I wasn't a part of the group. I had separated myself because every opportunity I could get, I was trying to get away to watch porn. Every opportunity, if they wanted to take the kids, like, I'll go do this, I'll go do that. And it was, I'm gonna say, at the end of the vacation, or maybe right after, when I realized I'd missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first where I realized wrong. And I still don't think at that stage I was being honest with myself and recognizing that it was an addiction per se.
Sure.
But I definitely realized that, okay, something is wrong with this. This is
right.
This isn't quite right.
It might not be normal. Yeah.
Yeah, like it didn't feel right. And I knew that there was something wrong, that, I was just like hiding myself away, and I'm locked in this room, and I'm trying to lock the door, and I'm hiding, and I'm like, don't want to get caught, and I'm, can they hear the sounds? And, so that was one of the first turning points for me. During that time, I was able to get away from it again for a few years.
Okay.
I met my now husband, and at the time of years, and I remember having the conversation, because it's in this culture, in today's day and age, it's something in some way or form, right?
Right.
So I remember having a conversation. I had watched it, right? That's how I had watched it. I had a history of watching it from time to time, which was true, right? I'd only had like kind of short spells at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, and to be fair, that's how I was processing it myself. I had still not come to the place that it was an addiction, and I felt like because I was able to leave it away for a few years, I was fine, right? Yeah. That was it. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't necessary to get any further into it than that. I'm not watching it currently.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan of it, and that's it, right?
Sure.
So that was that. And then a couple years into the marriage, I relapsed. We are now at this point, we're long distance, right? So there's also that stress. We're long distance. I'd had a new baby. I'm home by myself. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I relapsed. Um, I don't tell him right away. He asks, so I kind of get caught, which is never good. Getting caught is never the way that you want. Not caught in the act, thankfully, but caught nonetheless. Um, and that was not good.
Okay.
I thought that we weren't going to make it past that point. And that was, I would say, the biggest turning point in my whole journey. And this is when I was forced to confront the addiction thing. And he was like, if you know that it's wrong and you know that I would have a problem with it and that it could affect us and all these different things, and morally, like, it's not something you say that you're with, so still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to verbalize that I couldn't help it, that I couldn't stop, that I had tried, that I wanted to, that, yeah, you're right, but I can't. And I had to say it out loud to another person. And I don't think I'd ever quite said those things out loud to another person. Again, I thought it, but once I was able to kind of get away from it, it's like, oh, okay, I must be fine. It wasn't that after all,
Right.
So having to verbalize that and say it and face it, and he was like, so what are you going to do about it? And I had to say, I'll do what I need to do. I'll get help and I'll deal with it. And that is what brought me to Fortify.
Okay.
And
so let's stop for a minute, and I just want to review, because I do want to go into your recovery story and really specific things there. But let's kind of go back and summarize for a second. So, and I find this a lot. I would say among most people, but particularly among women, early exposure and early trauma, childhood trauma, are really strong indicators for this. And I find often that sometimes there's a break between that early exposure and then a break.
Yes.
And then when life responsibilities come in and the stresses come in, that's when
absolutely.
it kind of, just start, and then it starts coming back. And that's what the brain seeks out as a relief, as of intimacy. Because you pointed out the trauma, but also the intimacy. So going back just a minute on that, just what did that, how did that impact you? Talk about the intimacy for a minute.
So I mean, it was, again, it wasn't, the intimacy was a part of it, right? But it was addiction trauma.
Okay.
The trauma of the relationship, the trauma of the abuse. And I think for me, it was also perhaps a way of acting out and maybe even getting my own revenge. And since you're doing this, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a self-soothing mechanism. It was a way of getting a release that I wasn't getting in the relationship in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. And I just remember for a long time being really numb. So it's hard to express what was going on, because when you're in the middle of that kind of situation, and I was in that relationship for 6 years, you kind of go into survival mode and you start to kind of suppress to survive.
Good.
There were a lot of things, for example, like now looking back, that I can say, wow, that was really horrible. But in the moment, I didn't feel it. Mm-hmm. So when you're suppressing and you're surviving, this is also a way of feeling something, mm-hmm. but feeling something positive,
Yeah. No, I exactly. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring out, because I find that very common, that because at that age, the brain just doesn't know how to understand all of this. It's just so much. And so it just kind of, mm-hmm. there's that little protection that tends to go over, but then it likes to come out in a vengeance later
absolutely.
And so, but the intimacy, did that create isolation? Did that create loneliness?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was very isolated. When you're in an abusive relationship, a lot of times that happens. Mm-hmm. First of all, the abuser will try to isolate you, but then also you might try to isolate yourself in a way because you're embarrassed. And then sometimes friends and family will also withdraw themselves from you because you're acting weird or your husband's weird and they don't want that drama. And whatever. So I was absolutely very, very isolated, and that helped. And so when I got to Fortify, and that was the first time I'd heard the term, like, connection is the opposite of addiction. That has completely, been, that has stayed with me my whole time, and that revolutionized everything. Because when you're hungry for connection, that's another way that you'll sometimes turn to unhealthy ways of feeling something. And especially with pornography, it's a way of trying to feel like it's a counterfeit connection. It's a counterfeit intimacy. So I absolutely think I was also turning to pornography as a way to connect because I wasn't getting it anywhere else. And again, it was, the relationship, and he was actively trying to isolate me. But, before he even started that process, I think, I got married very young, and my peers were not getting married and starting families. So automatically I lost almost all of my friends. My family had an issue with the relationship from, immediately. So then they kind of withdrew. I was withdrawn, so like I said, it happens on all fronts.
Yeah.
It's it separates people,
Yes.
It's alienating. That's the word I was looking for. Alienating.
Yes. Alienating, isolating. No, these are all really good indicators that make you vulnerable to needing not only, those dopamine endorphin releases, but that need for connection. And you mentioned
Yes.
you started with erotica and then went to video. And
Yes.
I find that also common with women that kind of take it, others too.
Yes.
I don't want to necessarily genderize it, but I find it pretty common in the women
Yes.
I've heard stories from, that's a common link, seeking out that relational piece in the erotica, and then
Yes.
moving on to some of the other video. So
yes.
Well, let's move into your recovery then. So it sounds like then, so there's two kind of awakenings. One is like, okay,
Yes.
I'm isolating myself, hiding myself into, away from my family. Whoa, what is this? I have a beautiful family. Why am I doing this? And then went away.
Yes.
So talk about that time period. How did you go away for that time period after that one awakening?
Well, the first time, I would say it wasn't all that difficult. Once I kind of felt that, I was able to, what they would say, like, white knuckle it, or just stop, just stop, just don't do it. And the first time I was pretty successful with that, just I'm not going to do it anymore, but like I said, that lasted for a couple of years until everything went crazy. And I think that happens, like, in some cases, there are triggers, and sometimes we're more able to abstain as long as things are generally okay, mostly okay. So I think it could be different, but if we are running to this thing when things get bad, that, to me, at least for me, is still a form of addiction. Like the same thing with, like, an alcoholic, for example. They might be fine when things are okay, but if they're turning to this when things are hard and they are unable to say no, even if it's causing problems, that's still a problem. It may not have reached the same level of severity as somebody else, perhaps, or it may not have gotten, to that rock bottom, maybe, but it's still an issue. That's like saying an alcoholic is not an alcoholic until the rock bottom. No, that's not true. It just escalated.
Right.
So,
I like that point.
yeah.
Okay, so during that time period, then kind of fear was the motivating factor of like, whoa, and maybe but white knuckling was your
Yes. It was absolutely that. I don't think it was fear initially. I mean, maybe a little bit of that, but I just felt very strongly convicted.
Okay.
And, it was morally, it was at odds with what I wanted. I don't waste that kind of time. I felt like it was unhealthy. It just didn't feel good. Like the way I was acting out, it didn't feel right. And like I said, it's like something is wrong here. Like something is really wrong with the way I'm behaving,
So that's more like healthy guilt, like healthy remorse. Like,
Yes,
oh, this isn't
exactly.
fair. So I was motivated to do something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
However, the only tools you kind of had at hand at that time was like, let's just not do it. Let's just not do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So then that leads us to big transitions, having baby, long distance relationship, you know, and a lot of adjustments there, a lot of alone time, and that
Yes,
seemed to precipitate it. So then you
yes,
got caught. And I liked the point that you brought out, like trickle truth. A lot of time people do the trickle truth. It's because that's how they're coming to admit it to themselves.
exactly. Yes,
I love
yes,
that point that you made, because I totally agree with that. I mean, it's hard to come to that in that realization that, whoa, this is more than just a, a recreational sometimes thing.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I genuinely wasn't trying to be dishonest. And I think there's a very fine line there,
It is.
because we don't want to justify what we're doing, but we also need to be completely honest, which it's a very, very fine line. So I would just, say be careful with that, because I have to do the same thing myself. I went through a devotional, and they talk about taking responsibility.
Mhm.
And while there are factors that are beyond our control and all of this, there's got to be some responsibility taken there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, yes, there were things that happened when I was young that left me vulnerable that I had no control over. Yes, no one taught me about this thing that's beyond my control. But as an adult, when I was seeking this unhealthy coping mechanism, I knew it was unhealthy, and I knew it wasn't the best idea, but I did it anyway. And that's where the responsibility comes into play, because without that adult interaction, it could not have escalated further. I had to entertain it as an adult. That was still a choice I made after years of being away from it. And while, again, there were these vulnerabilities, and it doesn't rest squarely on my shoulders, I still have to take responsibility for that choice.
I love that. I love, yeah, responsibility, and along that word, another word with that is accountability, accounting for. And I love that what you just did. You accounted for, hey, that happened to me when I was a child. That it did, and there are consequences for that. But now that I'm an adult, it's my responsibility to it was my choice to engage in it as an adult, and now that I'm more
Mhm.
aware, it's my responsibility to move on. So that sounds like a tool, taking
Yeah,
responsibility then, that was
yeah,
an initial tool. Okay, good. So
yeah.
continue on. What else helped you then? How did your recovery evolve after the initial recognition? I'm caught. I took accountability with my husband as much as I could have at that point, trying to be
Yes, yes.
responsible as much as I could, have admitted to myself that this is a
Exactly.
problem. So continue from that point then.
The first thing I did was I had to come to a place where I said, you know what, just not doing it, just stopping, just saying, you know what, I'm not going to do it anymore. That is not good.
Mhm.
Also, like, even just prayer is not in and of itself. And I don't want to say prayer is not good enough. I want to be very careful about how I word that. But
Sure.
in the way is this, I remember in a message one time, a pastor said, there's and the natural. God will the super, but we need to do our part in the natural. And so prayer would be the super part, talking to God, dealing with the spiritual part of it. But then we still need natural tools to deal with our natural urges. And so I had to come to that place where I am accepting that I need to deal with this, and I need to be aggressive about this, and I need to pursue my recovery. I need to deal with this as an addiction. I need to make this a priority. And that was my first thing that I had to come to.
Okay.
Um, and that came after the prayer, and just, I'm not going to do it. And then once I did that, and I said, I went online, and I'm like looking in the app store, and I'm looking for tools, and I said, I need help. I need help. The first thing I found was the Reboot app in the App Store. I know it's in the Google App Store. I don't know about iTunes and all that. And that app, and I don't want, it was a great tool. And it was a starting point that kind of led me to Fortify, because they talk about the science, and there's little bite-sized like articles or little blurbs that'll talk a little bit more about the science and about how it's harmful to you, and, encouraging little, things like that.
So getting more
And it also,
specific. getting more information for what
Yes.
you're learning about.
Information. Yes. That was one of the first things, like really, and looking in at information regarding porn addiction and like just this is where I'm at. This is what I need to be looking into. This is what I need to be learning about. And, you know, and there was a moment where I was like, wow, like I never thought this would be a part of my story, but here I am. So the Reboot app, they also have like, I guess like a version, something similar to the Battle Tracker where it's keeping count. And that was the first also, like how long has it been? And that was the first time I really started to keep count.
Okay.
Up until that point, like I said, it's all just estimates. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't give you any date prior to that. So that was the first tool I found. And then after I went through the whole like course that they have on the app and it kind of started itself over, I needed more. I said, okay, I need more. I need more support. I need something a little more aggressive, a little more intensive.
Okay.
And that's when I found Fortify.
Okay.
And as far as the tools specifically that I got from Fortify, like I would say Fortify is like in a broad sense, the tool. Like most of what I know and most of what I use, I got from the training. Like visualization was really helpful to me, like visualizing how I should be responding to urges, visualizing what I should be doing. Because what I took from it was it's training your brain to respond how you want it to respond in the heat of battle, so to speak. Because if you do not train your brain ahead of time, then you will respond impulsively. And up until now, your impulses have not been healthy. Your impulses have not been what they're supposed to be. Your impulses are not what you like right now. These are not the impulses you want to resort to. You know, you need to change those impulses. And so the visualization was a way for me to kind of try to train my brain so that I'm responding the way I want to in the heat of the moment.
Okay. Day to day, just really quick on that tool, because that's a very powerful tool that I've had a lot of use. Would that be something that you would practice every day? Would you just do it when the urges would come up? Like what?
Well,
how would you?
yeah, no, you don't want to do it right when the urges come up because then that's, you know, that's the battle thing. That's the heat of the moment thing. You want to be training before the urge.
There you go.
So in a perfect world, I would do it every day. Me, like some weeks I might do it 5 days at most, I would think, but generally I do it a few times, like once or twice a week, I think on average.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends. But the more often,
yeah, that's good to know because you want to be realistic, right? I mean,
exactly, yeah. Like I mean, in a perfect
part of this, and so yeah, so realistically, 1 to 2 times a week was about your average.
Yes, for me. And I mean, I think whenever it comes into your mind, you can do it because it doesn't need to take a long time. And that's something that I have to work through with a lot of things because I tend to be very all or nothing, right? So if I can't devote an hour a day to this thing, then it just kind of falls by the wayside. And that's not a good way to be, you know? So that's something I'm working on is like if I can only do 3, that's fine. You know, if I can only do 5 this thing, that's fine. What, you know, so as long as it's happening and the more often you're doing like the better your results will be. Training you have, you know.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, and that's why I think is so valuable about your stories. Let's hear just some realistic, like the ideal sure, if you're going to do it every day, absolutely that will be effective. But reality, if you do it, you know, here and there, just keep guiding yourself back to it, it's going to be good enough. It's going to
Yeah,
along.
exactly. Like whatever you can bring to the table. One of the things that I'm working on is just doing my best. I can only do what I can do. I can only work with the tools that I have on board. I am, you know, what I am right now, good and bad. And so, I mean, that doesn't mean try to improve and shore up whatever those weaknesses are. And we absolutely need to examine ourselves, and areas where we are falling short, we need to investigate why and how can we improve. But right now, until the improvement happens, this is what I'm working with, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm, you know, and that goes with every area of life, right? Like we can only do what we can do right now.
I love that.
And that is okay. Just bring your best to the table. And that's something that no one else on the outside can tell you. You only know when you are really giving it 110%. And if you're not, then, you know, you might want to, you might want to go give it a little bit more juice, because again, what I came to realize is with this, if you have to pursue it passionately, if you want to be free, especially depending on how deeply entrenched you are in the issue, you're going to have to give it all you've got. Otherwise, for me, I had to give it all I had, or I wasn't going to be able to get free.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I love that. Okay, so the visualization, and then also, hey, just give it what you got. Give it what you got. Just, we can only do what we can do, and keep going there. Okay, what other tools would you say were stand out for you?
Okay, so after the battle tracker was key, like keeping track of how long it's been, tracking my time.
Why was that key for you?
I think because it gave me a tangible look at the successes and the failures. For one, when you're looking at the failures, like I just had one 2 days ago, it helped me. It gave me a little extra motivation, like negative reinforcement, and I guess in a way, and positive, because when you're doing well, you get to see your momentum. You get to see that number getting bigger. And as it gets bigger, you don't necessarily want to start over from zero.
Right.
But then on the flip side of that, when you're having setbacks, it helps a little bit to say, I don't want another red. I don't want to, I don't want 3 in a row, gosh, so it helps me, I think, to tangibly see the progress and, the successes and the failures, and give me a little bit more sense of momentum, give me a little bit more sense of, again, that negative reinforcement when necessary. It was a little bit of both.
Okay, perfect. Beautiful. Okay, keep going. Any other tools? Any other
So in the same vein, for me, early on in Fortify was milestones. And I got to a place where, because I had to change my thinking on it, right? Because again, with that negative reinforcement, also, it's a fine line, right? You don't want to go too far to the left or to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was, in the beginning, if I was only on day 1 or 2 or 5 even, or whatever, it was like, well, it's so small. If I mess up right now, it's fine. It doesn't matter if I start back over right now, because I'm not messing up a 45-day streak. It's 3 days. I can start that over, no biggie. But I had to change my thinking on that and say, you know what? One day is an accomplishment, and I cannot get to the 45 or the 60 or the 1 year or whatever without those one day. I need that one day, and I need another day, and I need another one. Those are the building blocks, and I need those. And once I started looking at it like those days add up to the bigger milestones, and I need to celebrate those smaller milestones, and they need to be acknowledged, and that they're good and necessary.
Yes.
It helped me to get past it's just been one day. What difference does it make? I may as well, I'll start over tomorrow. It helped me. And so I put a countdown widget on my home screen. As a matter of fact, can I show? My phone is dead. I think I turned it off. But I put a countdown widget on my home screen to show how many days I had left, or how many hours I had left until the next milestone. And so it helped me to say, okay, I've only got 12 hours left until I hit one day. And I could see it ticking down. 12 hours, 11 hours, 10 hours, 59 minutes. I could see it counting down, and it helped me to hold out, because I'm this close to making another milestone. I'm this close. I can do it. I can do 10 more hours. And it was right there on my phone, on my home screen. And that helped tremendously. And so then I could see myself hit one day, and then 3 days, and then 5 and 7 and 10, and it get bigger and bigger. And by doing it that way, it's smaller steps, it's bite-sized, and it feels manageable.
I love it.
And it feels like I can do it,
Yep.
And that helped.
I totally, that is so key. And that's when I see people get over that hump, they can get to that, because it's the challenge of keeping the end in mind, but keeping in the moment too. Right? That balance. And that's what you described was beautiful. Okay. So just a little selfish question. What did you do to celebrate?
honestly, that's not something I'm great at, right? Because for me, I find that money is a thing, right? And it's like I don't have the money to buy myself something or to go out and do this or whatever. So celebrations are usually pretty small, right? But one of them might be ice cream. I'm gonna have ice cream today, and I don't necessarily need to do anything to have ice cream. But today I have a reason to have ice cream. I'm gonna have ice cream,
You're going to
or
enjoy it in a different way.
exactly. It's a little sweeter because I'm celebrating myself.
Right.
Or it might be something as small as like, what, I'm gonna get myself like a mask from the store and I'm gonna give myself a little home facial. Or one month I joined the fighter club thing. So I always wear my little fighter club wristband thingy. Can you guys see?
Yep.
See? So one month I joined the fighter club. Another month I bought myself one of the fighter t-shirts. I was gonna wear it today, but it's in the laundry.
It happens.
Yes. I was like, oh, that would be such a great idea, and I'll wear my shirt. But then I was like, shoot, I have to wash it. Forget it. Forget it, But yeah, so like that was a big thing for me. What else was another? I bought myself a book one time. So it just depends. Like if I have a couple dollars to buy myself a little something, I'll do that. If not, it might be something like I'm gonna lay down and I'm gonna watch a movie, and that's my celebrate. And again, it's a little sweeter when it's just I have a reason to do it this time. This is for me.
I love it. I love it. See, those are the little things, right? Those are the nuggets.
But you know what? But also the one I wanted to say this is even if it's not that kind of celebration, even if it's just a little happy dance that you do inside yourself, I think that's fine too.
I agree.
Like sometimes it's just enough to acknowledge it. Like I look at my phone and I see, yes, another one, like I did it. And then I, type in, I'm moving on to the next one. And sometimes it's just that. And because
I love that too. Mm-hmm.
For me, if I got caught up and I have to celebrate every 3 days, like
that's a great point, because we could get into that all or nothing and then with overthinking our celebrations, right? No, that's a really good point. I love this small but meaningful, like just taking that 10 seconds to really allow that, victory.
Like, yeah, I did it.
I'm doing it. This is possible, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. Okay, keep going. What triumphs, victories, struggles, anything else sticking out?
Okay, so like another tool, so besides the forums were really, really, really helpful to me early on, especially as I was going through the training. Mm-hmm. The Fortify forums were the first of their kind that I encountered. Other folks in the forums had recommended like the NoFap forums, which I tried before Fortify, and I didn't like it at all. I don't want to discourage other people from trying it. If that is something that works and if you like it, then go for it. But be very, very careful, because the NoFap forums are also co-ed, but they don't seem to be monitored as closely. And you've got a lot of guys in there that are like, yeah, female accountability partner. And it doesn't feel super safe there for me. And men and women, be very, very careful about the the NoFap forums and folks looking for opposite sex accountability partners. Please, 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 please weigh that very carefully in your heart, because I don't see that being super healthy for folks dealing with unwanted sexual behaviors. So just my little PSA about the NoFap forums.
So in the Fortify forums, you felt that there's
yes. I felt like it's very, very, very safe.
Issues. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. I didn't see men trying to like hit on the women or anything, nothing inappropriate that could be triggering or, be a stumbling block to someone in their journey.
Okay. I like that. I like the awareness that everybody needs to be aware of themselves and what our limitations are, in anything in life, but specifically in this, know where those limitations are for you and just be really aware inside of you is kind of what I'm hearing from that.
Yeah. Okay. So So yeah, so the forums were really helpful to me, having a place to vent where people, like-minded people were all looking for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all like, everyone's really supportive and great. And I like, I find it, and I think I posted it somewhere, like, I find it to be the most respectful place on the internet I've ever encountered. Like, because the internet can be a really yucky place. And the Fortify forums, everyone is so like, we can agree to disagree and everything is great and we're good and we're all here for you and we're cheering you on. And it's just like awesome. So yeah, so the forums were a great place for me. As far as like, so triumphs. So initially what happened was, so I'll do with the struggles first. I was having a hard time cutting out everything cold turkey at once. I was really, I was finding that to be a challenge. And so at some point, as I was going through the training, I said to myself, you know what? If I slip up and let's say, I read a story or something, as opposed to watching a video, I'm still going to count that as a victory. And I am not recommending that necessarily for everyone. I don't think that approach would work for everyone or is even good for everyone. But for me, it was helpful to say, I'm just not going to do this thing. I'm not going to watch a video. Maybe if I type this term into my Google bar, but I didn't click the search result, that was still a victory for me early on. Mm-hmm. And then as I moved forward, maybe I had 6 months free, I would say, okay, now if I type that term into the search bar, that's a setback.
Oh, I love that. So raising the bar. So starting with, which goes along with those SMART goals, right? Raising, like setting something achievable, and then just raise the bar as you went along. Is that?
Yes, okay. Exactly. So I was going, like you said, I was raising the bar slowly. And once I shifted gears and I started doing it that way, I found I was being more successful moving along and I was making more steady progress. Mm-hmm. So then I was able to, abstain from this thing and then abstain from this thing. So for me, it was stuff like that, like no videos, but maybe I would type a term in, but not hit search. And then it was, not even typing the term in. And then it was, then cutting out stories. And for a long time, once I started watching the videos, the stories weren't even a problem anymore. And then I found myself relapsing and going back to that. And so then I had to relearn. I had to, pull away from it again. And I had to realize that it's the same problem because
I love that.
There are different points of view concerning like erotica versus pornography, for example. But for myself, I had to come to the realization they're the same problem and I had to treat it the same way. And so I went through the same steps. Mm-hmm. I went through the same steps. So whereas, and so now whenever I talk to folks in recovery, I've got like different counts, right? So like I have abstained from videos for over 500 days now. But like erotica, for example, it's been like 130 days, almost 130. So, so I have like different counts, but that works for me,
That. Yeah. No, because then you can keep the different, but that also helps us see how complex this issue can get, right? And how our brain can kind of, okay, you cut out that for me, so I'm going to go over here, right? And so you have to but if you take it all on at once, it gets overwhelming. And so
exactly.
Take one piece at a time and get that under your belt. Using the same tools. That's another thing that I thought, no, it's the same thing, different avenues, but the same. So using the same tools, I can do this, and then I'm having the victory. But I like how you kept track of different ones because I think it helps you see that progress.
Yes. And I found an app that would help me with that specifically. Oh goodness, I have to remember the name of the app. It's like a timer app. Mm-hmm. And I found that also in the App Store, and it allows you to keep track of different things in your, have a timer for each individual thing. And so that has been tremendously helpful to me. As far as other struggles I've had, isolation was a huge thing. We touched on that a little bit. And so, like I said, after my previous marriage, I was very, very isolated. I didn't have many friends, you know, and so starting with recovery, I was still in that place because it's hard to go backwards once you've, you know, once people have, you know, kind of distanced themselves and all of that stuff. It's hard to go backwards. And then, especially as a mom or as a parent, it's you have a job, you have your family. It's hard enough to make time for your kids and your spouse, perhaps, and maybe you don't even have any time for yourself. And you know, it can be pretty hard to prioritize relationships, right? And to prioritize connections. And so when I started recovery and you hear all this talk about accountability partners, it was really discouraging for me because it's like, I don't have that.
Yeah.
Like, and then you would hear stuff that would say you cannot get free if you don't have accountability. You absolutely, like, recovery does not work without accountability. And you would like that kind of language. And it was like, so then what are you telling me, that I can't get free without an accountability partner? Like,
Right.
it was very, very, very discouraging
Yes.
because, you know, and then I feel like a lot of times the assumption in like the book, and again, it's a book, right? But I'm talking about an assumption, is that if you don't have accountability, that you can, if you just reach outside of yourself and if you just step outside of your comfort zone, it's there. You can do it. You just have to make a choice. And while that may be true sometimes, and it may even be true most of the time, it is not true all the time.
Okay.
Because for me, and hopefully this is for somebody that's watching this, I'm a very social person, actually, and I don't have a problem putting myself out there. I will. I really, really will. And I try to be very friendly. And, you know, I've tried really hard to make connections, but I've been unable to do so. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a very complex thing in my life that goes beyond recovery. But for one, right now I am a geographically single mom, right? So that means where if I do go out with a friend, my kids are there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have the luxury of going out and doing a girls' night thing. I don't have the luxury of really investing time in building those kind of relationships. And relationships take time,
You do.
even accountability relationships.
Yeah.
Unless you're paying like a therapist, if you're talking about just relationship, just like a friend, that takes time to build those kind of relationships. You have to invest. And it has to be two ways. It has to work both ways. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you can't force it upon someone.
Right.
So I, so I just say all of that to say I wasn't able to find that until recently. And even now so I'll move on. I'll get to that part. So anyway, for a long time, the forums on Fortify were my accountability.
Love that. Yes.
That was it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get to a place where I was okay with that. And when I would hear stuff about accountability, I tuned out. And I'm not saying that's the best way to be, because again, if you have the option at all, I think it's very important to pursue it. But if you don't have the option, just eat the hay and spit out the sticks. Get online, get on Fortify,
I love that.
get in the forums, and let that be your accountability. And that's what I did for a long time. And so recently I found an online women's forum for recovery where you do have the option to link up and form accountability relationships. And again, even with that, it's hard though, because people have lives and it gets hard. And, so if you reach out to 10 women, you might form one or two really good accountability relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're dealing with people online, that's the other thing. When there's no life connection in real life, you have to go back for numbers. It's like when you invite people to a birthday party, you invite 20 and 10 show up. It's like that.
Right.
So that has been my journey with accountability. And so right now, I would say I've got 3 pretty good accountability partners that I've met online, and I've never met any of them in person. I use WhatsApp, which is a great tool, and that's how we communicate.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. There was one more thing that you wanted to share that I want to save time for, but so let's summarize this up. Anything else? So we have the accountability, we have the battle tracker, we have the take it a little at a time. I love that, like making the short, like raising the bar on the setbacks, um,
Yeah.
and accountability, but also connection in the forms was your way of connecting and getting accountability until you got some other. But what I love from that is, hey, it's a hard thing to find. So if you can't find it,
Yes.
don't be discouraged. Do
Yes.
everything else. Keep looking, keep open, do some workarounds, use Fortify as much as you can, but
Yes.
keep going.
Yes. Keep going.
I don't have accountability, so I'm never gonna do it. Find, figure workarounds and keep doing your
Exactly. Yes.
get that puzzle piece in there. So
Yes.
anything else from your, because the title that was evolving recovery, being
Yes.
patient with evolving recovery.
Yes. Yes.
Demonstrated that I love your really practical every day. This was a daily struggle, and getting past
Yes.
the 1 to 3 day mark and changing my mind frame on it. That all fits
Yes.
into that. Anything else that you want to say in summary of that before we go to the last question?
So again, talking about tools, right? So there's this book I talked about it in the forums a little bit, called Hobbies and Habits. It's a free ebook. It's on the Covenant Eyes website. Like, if you go to Covenant Eyes and click like resources and ebooks, you should be able to find it. And one of the things they talk about there is there's like 3 components, and they talk about rats that they put on like heroin or something. I don't know. But basically, rats, they were able to stay away from whatever that they had an environment that was stimulating, like a nice clean, like, they put like foliage and stuff. Like, the environment was a factor. Having other rats, so social interaction was a factor, and like stimulation, things to do, activity. So for us, that would be like hobbies. And so if you apply the same tools to your own life, like, connection is the opposite of addiction. Having some form of connection, and again, even if it's not accountability relationships, which, like I said, can be hard, but if you have some kind of family, like, my kids are with me every day, you know what I'm saying? So, or getting involved in a ministry, it doesn't have to necessarily be accountability relationships, but some kind of connection with other people, going out, or try to connect with someone. Go try to connect as best you can with someone. um, Having a hobby, like, are good, stimulate your mind. uh, Hobbies where you get to feel useful, volunteering, you're donating your time somewhere, you're helping people. When we feel like we're helping and we are contributing to society, that also helps. So having some kind of hobby, that book was also a really good tool for me. I found that, like, I want to say like 6-ish months ago. And also, like, when you're done with the Fortify, try something else, keep going. For me, I've had really, again, like, make a decision to pursue my freedom.
Yes.
Really pursuing it. And so I keep looking for tools. I keep looking for devotion. A women's recovery group, that was maybe 8 months ago or so. Like, when I was done with the training, I kept looking. There's a website called Setting Captives Free. It's like a free, like, training, devotional, kind of whatever you want to call it. And that's been instrumental as well. So just keep looking, keep finding things. There are tons of books for resources. So there's no, but like, for when there's look, it's good though. Like, there's a book called Proven, and it's a 40-day devotional, and they have Proven Men, and it's a $40 book, so it's a little pricey. I have the means, it's there. So there's free stuff, and other stuff. If you have more opportunities,
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you're a mom. And this is a question I get a lot, and I know that's something that you feel very dedicated
Oh
about.
my gosh. Yes.
How do you share? How are you sharing with your children? When do you share? How do you share? What
Okay.
do you use with your children to prevent a similar pathway, or any help along the way?
It's so important. Um, like for me, I was exposed very early from women and men that I've, like in recovery. The exposure is kids have a chance of being exposed to pornography. Okay? I mean, what to be exposed to pornography, and it does conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Children have at all. You need to be talking to them about. They need to be talking to them about it. And for children as young as 3 or 5, pictures and bad pictures. And if you see pictures of people without their clothes on, pictures of people only couples, or verbs you would use with your children specifically, that is a bad picture. And immediately, cover your eyes, run away, tell mommy. There's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures that I use for young kids, and then they also have a Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, like just Good Pictures, Bad Pictures for older. I think it's for like 8 to 11, something like that. I use with my older children. A good starting point for that conversation. A website. I'll post it.
And you can post it on the comments also, and any other resources.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so you go back. I'll add it. There's a website where you can download like PDF, like discussion thingamajiggies, and to talk to younger kids. Find a conversation starter like generator on the. You can use that. So those are your tools to vent. You cannot avoid it. Now, if your children are home with don't have access to internet, you might forestall that.
Mm-hmm.
They access to internet from you. Sometimes, like even on YouTube, for example, is looking at it can be a cartoon and it can be harmless. Kissing scenes.
Yeah.
Then suggested more. Then it escalates and it can go down a rabbit hole very quickly. Right. And I know for a fact this happened too. And then before this pubescent child has been exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have the conversation. They should not have unlimited access to internet. And again, at least those conversations to be mad about what happens when those videos pop up. Because, like for example, on YouTube, they have videos where guys, and I don't know too much into it, but they're going up to women and initiating interaction with strangers, and when the women agree to it, then it's supposed to be a prank video. It's stupid. It's disgusting. The point is, YouTube is dangerous. And we have to be with our children. Now, if you have a child that has already been exposed to pornography, it's very important start taking steps. Like, do not assume that because deal or that they'll be fine or that all we need to do is put a lock on it and move on. The Fortify training is geared to teenagers and adults. You can work through it. You know what I'm saying? You have to take the steps, talk to them about what they're doing to themselves.
Yeah.
Talk to them.
Yeah.
How
Yeah. So I want to summarize, because I know you need to get back to your children that are busily working on their schoolwork. But so what I'm hearing you saying is take precautions. You gave some really excellent, and if you would put those, it shows that it's been cutting out in just the last few minutes. So maybe if you can type out some of those on those verses that you said out on the comments, and then they can get those for sure. But what I hear most important is get a relationship with them. Get a relationship, make it comfortable for them to talk to you about you feel confident talking, so they'll feel confident talking, but do age
Yes.
appropriate and
Yes.
really feel those. All right, well, we have got to unfortunately end. This has been amazing, Nick. Thank
Oh
you
my
so much.
gosh.
Vulnerable,
The
and
hour went by so fast.
it did. It went by very fast. So, but thank you. And we can continue the conversations on the comments and in the forums. And Nick is on the forums, so you can have there. So
I'm Quirky Mom 89, so I'm there.
ask her any questions. She'll answer them. Perfect. Okay, just a reminder, we have a couple of additional webinars coming up. Forrest Benedict on a great recovery hack that you may not be aware of is on November 20th. And Todd Sylvester on overcoming limiting beliefs is on December 18th. So thank you so much for joining us. We will post this today or tomorrow, so you can rewatch it if you need to get any, and then ask on the forums or on comments here, and we'll answer any of your questions. Thank you, Nick, so much for being here.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.